Hi, welcome back to Frost and Embers, where today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. So I found this walnut when I was out on a dog walk the other day. I usually tend to work on a bit of a larger scale, but I have been seeing pictures of people making little mice and other cute little critters that are living in walnuts. So I thought today I would give it my own spin and go back to my roots and create the tiniest little dragon that's going to live inside this walnut. All of the miniatures I've ever tried to make have ended up really big, so I'm hoping that I can make something tiny enough that's actually going to fit inside of this walnut. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to create this little dragon out of my cos clay. It's very light, it's my absolute favourite, I love it so much, it is so versatile, really easy to colour and really easy to work with. Although I did find that it was perhaps slightly a little bit too soft for this project and all the tiny details, but it is generally one of my favourites. So trying to get a rough shape and a rough size just to get me going, and rolling out the clay into a somewhat dragony shape. So it takes a little bit of fussing and futzing around to try and get the exact shape that I want. I had kind of a vision of how I wanted this dragon to look, but it's a case of pragmatics and how it's actually going to fit in that tiny walnut shell. So just playing around with it, trying to get the size right, making sure that the tummy is small enough and that I can get the tail to wrap around and have that head nice and tucked in so it looks almost like fetal. It's really just a process of trying to take away small bits of clay, making that body slightly thinner, trying to get the right head shape and the right kind of proportions as well. The head did start to look slightly too big here, so again, trying to test it out for size and just readjusting everything. Again, the nose is too long here, so it is just a case of trial and error at this point. This is where I really start to hit that point of struggling to work on such a small scale. I just find it so much more fiddly and the details just don't seem to come through quite as quickly as when you're working on a slightly larger project. So I start to bring out my tools just to try and help me shape some of these things and just bring it to life and get the realism coming into it. So it starts to fit quite nicely in that walnut shell, so I'm now just going to take it out and stretch out the body so that I can start building up the details on the face. These ball stylus tools are so helpful when it comes to sculpting. They are absolutely brilliant and worked a dream when it came to working on this kind of scale. Now it's time to start putting in the details on the face. Starting with the nose, I tried to build up a little bit of a nostril and then just building up a little bit of facial definition. Using my trusty old surgical spirit to try and get the dragon nice and smooth. Using a slightly bigger ball stylus, I tried to give this dragon a little bit more definition along the top of its nose, so that it has a snout and then some cheeks underneath it. I always tend to go for a slightly horse-shaped face. When it comes to dragons, I've seen lots of people using horses as the premise for sketching out their dragons, and it actually translates quite nicely for sculpting as well. Usually for my dragons I use glass cabochons for their eyes, however this was so tiny I just didn't have anything that was small enough, and also the eyes were going to be closed, so I'm just using tiny small pieces of clay, rolling them into balls and then just blending them into his face. He used this really sharp tool to go in and just add in some details, so he's putting in the creases of the eyes and then going in and sculpting out his mouth and trying to give him a tiny little beak shape at the front of his mouth as well, to give him just a little bit more interest and detail on that face. So although it's a baby dragon, I do want him to still have little tiny baby horns, so I'm just going in with, again, small little pieces of clay and blending those into the top of his head where his horns will eventually grow to be something impressive and to marvel at. I repeat that on the other side and then go in and start building up his chubby cheeks. Originally I had in my mind that this dragon would turn out slightly chunkier, but due to the size of the walnut that I had, it just wasn't going to happen. So I tried to compromise and build out his little cheeks to give him a little bit more of a cutesy vibe. Going in with this really nice texture tool, it's so helpful. Beforehand I used to do scales individually and this has really sped up the process, although it was slightly trickier using it on a smaller scale. It was about this point in the project when I realised that this clay was maybe a bit too soft because I kept squishing the details. Time to give this dragon some colour. I'm using my favourite mica powders. They are so vibrant, so pigmented, I love them so much and they just blend beautifully together. So going in with 2 different shades to try and get a little bit more of a variation. A copper colour for the face and then a darker brown for the body. I never notice it so much when I'm actually painting the mica powders on, but the way that it looks on camera makes it appear like fairy dust. It's so pretty. If you don't have mica powders on hand, I always used to use eyeshadow. You can get some really beautiful pigmented eyeshadows that have really lovely shimmers to them, and that works equally well. I really envy people that work with miniatures and create things on such a small scale. My hands were just way too warm at this point and kept taking away all the details. So he's finally out of the oven, the details are nice and solid, and he just fits in that walnut perfectly. So now it's time for wings. So I start out just by sketching a rough shape so that I can use it as a template to cut out the wings, and just trying to gauge, do I want slightly bigger wings to wrap around the dragon, or something that's slightly smaller. I'm going to go ahead and give you a spoiler, I do go for the bigger wing. It looks much cuter being able to wrap around that dragon, and again really emphasises that fetal position. And actually in hindsight I do think I probably could have gone slightly bigger than this. So I've just flattened out a piece of clay and then just using that template and drawing around it in order to get that rough shape. I then repeat the same process for the opposite side of the wing, just cutting it out really carefully. Going in and just trying to define some of those details and getting those points nice and pointy, and then starting to colour the inside of it. It's always much more difficult to try and colour the inside of a wing when it's attached, and then just trying to position it using a little bit of bacon bond and just sticking it onto that dragon. This was super fiddly and took a little bit of patience, but then eventually I got it in a position I liked and just blended it into the back. I put a small amount of detail on the wings and then I go back in with that copper colour and I just paint it on there. Whilst that's in the oven, I'm going to have a go at something very new to me, so trying to get these hinges fitted to the walnuts. I'll be honest, there is probably a much easier way to go about this than trying to use a Dremel. The Dremel really didn't work all that well. It did end up just being more of a concaved loop, so to speak, than it did an actual square, which did pose issues later on down the line. Maybe I should have gone about it in a different way, but this was all I had available to me, that or an X-Acto knife, which I really wasn't happy with using. So it did the job. It could definitely have been a lot better though. Watching this back, I'm looking at my naive self thinking this was just going to be a simple solution, a little bit of super glue. No, I don't know what happened. The super glue for some reason just would not set. I waited ages and eventually went in and I had to resin it together after I literally don't even know, probably hours of fussing around with it. I would have ideally liked this gap to be slightly smaller. It was a little bit frustrating. As you can see, there is that loop there between the hinges, but it closes okay on the opposite side and it does the job. I wanted to give this walnut a bit of a dragon egg kind of feel to it, so I went in and just dry brushed on some copper acrylic paint just to give it that shimmer. I didn't want to go too overboard with this. I still wanted it to look semi-natural, but I just think it gives it a little bit of an extra pop. To finish off, I wanted to make it a little bit more cushioned for the dragon. I know that I said I wanted it to have a dragon egg feel, but perhaps somewhere that perhaps he's residing in as a home more so than anything. So I go in with a bit of Yoo-hoo glue and then my trusty moss, and this will also help to stop the dragon from rattling around too much. It does fit in there beautifully, but I did want this to be a bit of a chunkier dragon and to kind of fill up both sides of the walnut. It didn't end up working out like that, which is fine, but this moss just helps to kind of solve that. So I just go in with teeny tiny little bits and spread it all the way around, pushing it in every now and then just to make sure that it's nice and secure. And now that that is all finished, I think we are ready for the reveal. So to wrap up, I am actually pretty happy with this project. I do think that it is kind of cute. It is very different to anything I have ever done before. I've never done anything on this kind of scale. It is not necessarily a scale I think I will always turn to, but I enjoyed the challenge and it has given me a little bit more understanding of how to work with something a little bit smaller. I do think that the walnut was super cute and I really do love the idea. I definitely would not use a Dremel again. I would try and figure out a way to try and chisel out those gaps instead. I do have loads more hinges and a handful more walnuts, so who knows, perhaps another project is on the horizon. But that really didn't work too well for me, and maybe doing a bit more research in terms of the best glue to use, because super glue really wasn't working for me. But overall, I am generally pretty happy with this project and the way that it turned out. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a wonderful day wherever you are. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.